I'm Aiman. Welcome back to one of my auto repair videos. And today we're going to be talking about wheels and rims. And the reason that we're talking about wheels and rims is because we're replacing the cars on my dad's Civic and my mom's Acura with their new winter tires. And while we're replacing the tires, my mom asked my dad a few questions about tires and rims, and here we are. My dad wants me to explain what I explained to my mom, because my dad doesn't really explain things well to my mom, so he has to talk to me first, and I have to explain to my mom. So here I am now explaining to you guys about what I know about wheels and rims, and this is going to be just a basic guide to what I know. It's not going to be super comprehensive because I'm not an expert on these, but I do know a bit about these. Just about the different things that you should know for wheels and rims and how to choose them. First off, most important thing, terminology. Some people call these wheels, some people call them rims. And I've heard these referred to as a set of rims quite often. But just to clarify, this entire thing is called a wheel. Only the outside edge is called a rim. So, for the rest of this video, we're going to be using that terminology, and I think that's the terminology that most people use. Just, when you hear people say a set of rims, they're actually talking about a set of wheels. First thing to talk about is rim size. How do you know what is the right rim size to use for your car? And we'll talk about codes and designations in a bit, but first off, let's talk about tires. So with car tires, you can look on the inside of the driver's side door to find a sticker that tells you what tire to use. The thing to point out is that although this is talking about tires, it actually tells you what diameter to use. So if you want to figure out how to read this entire thing, go check out my other video on it. But the most important thing to know here is R19. 19 here means 19 inches, and that's the diameter of the tire and the wheel that you want to use. So this right here is about 19-inch diameter wheel. And you can go smaller or bigger on your tires, but 19 inches is the one that the original equipment manufacturer uses, and the one that you should probably use if you don't know anything better about cars. Alright, so going back to the original question, how do we know what rims that we can use for our car? The rims that you can choose depend on two things. First off, the car itself, and also the tires that you're going to use. So first with the car, the most important thing is diameter. You can't use 7-inch wheels, which don't exist by the way, on a 19-inch diameter car. But you can look it up online. You can use, if your original wheel diameter was 17, you can use 15-inch diameter, 16-inch diameter, and plus diameter, which is 18 diameter. So that certainly depends on the car that you use, the diameter of your rims. Another thing is also the Centerbore and the PCD. First off, the Centerbore is the center hole in your rims. So why does this matter? If the Centerbore for your rim or your wheels is too small, you're not going to be able to mount it properly. Now for I'm so sorry. For my dad's Honda Civic, the Centerbore is 64.1 millimeters. And the Centerbore hole for this wheel is 66 millimeters. This one is 70. This one's pretty huge, which means that all of these would fit onto the Centerbore of my dad's car. But let's say that the Centerbore here was 60 millimeters, it wouldn't be able to fit on, and it wouldn't be able to mount properly. Another thing that matters is PCD. PCD stands for pitch center diameter, and what it's talking about is that the holes or the bolts that fit in your wheel form a imaginary circle that have a given diameter. And because it depends on the car when you're trying to mount the wheel, not just the formation of the bolts. So this one has 5 bolts. You don't want to put a 5-bolt wheel onto a 4-bolt wheel, a 4-bolt car. You also need to make sure that these bolts are the same distance away from each other as they are on the car. To put this into perspective, if the bolts are closer together on the car than they are on the wheel, they're not going to be able to fit onto each other. But let's talk about interchangeability. For Honda and Acura, the PCD is 5 times 114.3, which means that the wheels are most likely interchangeable. But what about here? By the way, that 5 times 1.14, 5 means the number of bolts it has, 114 means the diameter. So this has 5 bolts, so that got that right, but we don't necessarily know if the diameter is 114. This is a Toyota, by the way. So in order to check that, if we can use this wheel for a Honda, we'd have to check the specs of this to make sure that it's the right diameter. And for the Hyundai, same thing. It also has 5 bolts, but we're not sure if the diameter is right. Now, another thing is my brother's Honda Insight. I'm pretty sure that had 4 bolts. Obviously, you wouldn't be able to mount a wheel with 5 bolt holes onto one with 4 bolts. Okay, so that's another thing to think about when you're trying to find the right wheel to use for your car. One last thing to think about is, and it probably won't come up a lot, is the actual hole, the actual size of the hole that the bolts go through. And the reason that this probably won't come up a lot is that if a manufacturer uses the 114 millimeter distance that Honda uses, they're probably going to use the same bolt size that they use. If the hole is too small for the bolts, you're not going to be able to mount it properly. Alright, so I'm going to take a step back and try to approach this video from another angle. And, you know, it's a bit lecture heavy now, but let's try approaching it from a question perspective. First off, for buying rims, let's say, for buying rims, there are 2 major questions. How do I know it'll fit with my car? And how do I know it'll fit with the tires that I'm using? The first thing with the car situation, let's put it into perspective. There might be a few cuts through this because a rabbit is bothering my dad right now, making him uncomfortable. But the first question of if it fits with my car is, let's say that you are trying to find replacement tires for your car, and you know, tires and wheels are pretty expensive. They're like in the hundreds of dollar ranges. So you're probably looking for a good deal on tires. So you're looking on Craigslist and stuff. And let's say you find someone that says, oh, I'm moving to Florida soon, and I need to get rid of these tires and wheels. Now, maybe the tires don't matter to you as much, which we'll get to that in a bit. But let's say the wheels are perfect. You know, you think that the seller says that they can fit on Honda, but they're not genuine ones, they're aftermarket. So let's say you get these tires, how do you know that they're gonna fit on your car? So that's the first question. How do you know, like, does it have the right clearance? The second question of how do I know it's gonna fit with my tires is, let's go back to that situation. Instead of looking for wheels, let's say you're looking for tires. Let's say that, you know, you don't really care about the rims that the seller's giving up, but you care about the tires. You really like the rims that you have right now, but the tires that you have on them are bald. Let's say you want to replace them. And the second question is, how do I know that those tires will fit into those rims? So let's try approaching the video from that angle. I think we covered the first question pretty accurately. I mean, there's one more thing about wheel offset that I'll get to later, but the first question is pretty easy to answer. You just need to make sure that the specs are the same. You can go on wheelsize.com and just make sure all the specs are correct on the new rims that you have, or new wheels that you have, compared to the specs that you need for your car. But getting to that second question is a bit trickier. Let's say on Craigslist, those tires that you found are like wide tires, they're low profile, and they really are cool. But you want to keep those rims because, you know, they also look cool. How do I know that these 9-inch wide tires will fit on this 7.5-inch wheel? And here's the bottom line. If your tire is too thin, it is straight up not going to work. You're not going to be able to mount a skinnier tire on a wider rim. But what about a wider tire on a skinnier rim? So just again, this is 9 inches. This is a 7-inch wide rim. Can that work? And the answer is maybe. You can fit it in. It'll be really hard to fit the tire on, and when you put it on, it's probably going to look very round, but you can fit it in. And the thing is, some tire shops might not even allow you to. They might say it's too hard to, but it's possible. And like I said, it's going to look a bit round, and it might not look as cool as you want them to. And I guess talking about that, if, let's say on these tires, you can see that this one looks pretty flat, pretty close to the profile of the rim, And that looks nice. But let's say on the Hyundai, this is a very wide tire mounted on a very thin rim. This one looks very round. It doesn't look really nice. I mean, it's up to your preferences, but I'd say for most people, those round tires don't look very nice. So you want to make sure that you match your, sorry, I have to move around this bunny. You have to make sure that your tire matches your rim. You don't want the rim to be too wide, definitely. And you also want to make sure that the profile of your tire matches with the rim. You don't want it to be too round. So I said I would explain offset. It's a bit of a complicated topic, so bear with me. But the bottom line is that a positive offset means that the wheel will be more inside of the car. So a positive inside offset means that the wheel will be closer to the inside of the car, while a negative offset means that the wheel will be closer to the outside of the car. And an example of a negative offset wheel would be something called a deep dish wheel, ones that look like this.